A moment when a woman is already opening up emotionally, already leaning closer, already curious about you in a way she doesn't fully understand yet. But instead of guiding that moment deeper, most men destroy it with boring questions. So, what do you do for work? Where are you from? Do you come here often? And just like that, the spark dies. Because attraction doesn't grow from safe conversations. It grows from emotional tension, curiosity, and the feeling that you see something inside her that most people never notice. Tonight, I want you to understand something most men never realize. A woman doesn't open up her desire because of your looks, your money, or some rehearsed pickup line. She opens up when your words touch a part of her mind that makes her feel seen, understood, and slightly exposed in a thrilling way. Welcome back to Female Code Unlocked. If you enjoy learning the deeper psychology behind attraction, desire, and female behavior, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because what you're about to learn today is something most men go their entire lives without discovering. Now imagine this. You're sitting across from a woman. Maybe it's a date. Maybe it's someone you just met. Maybe it's a woman you've been talking to for a while, but things feel stuck. The conversation is flowing, but something is missing. She's polite. She smiles. She laughs a little. But emotionally, she's still guarded. Most men think attraction happens by impressing her. But the real secret is far more powerful. Attraction happens when you guide her into revealing pieces of herself she doesn't usually show. And that begins with the first question. Not a boring one, not a logical one, but an emotional one. Instead of asking about her job, you lean back slightly, look at her with quiet curiosity, and ask something unexpected. What's something about you that people completely misunderstand? Watch what happens in that moment. For a second, her brain pauses. Because nobody asks that. Now she has two choices. She can give a shallow answer, or she can open a small door into her real personality. And when she starts explaining, you're not interrupting. You're not judging. You're simply listening in a way that makes her feel like her thoughts actually matter. This creates something psychologists call emotional investment. And emotional investment is the foundation of desire. Because the more she reveals about herself to you, the more her mind starts attaching meaning to the interaction. But here's where most men make another mistake. They stop there. They stay in safe territory. But if you really want to create that intense pull that keeps you on her mind long after the conversation ends, you ask the second question. And this one goes deeper. After she finishes sharing something personal, you look at her slightly differently, almost like you're analyzing a mystery. Then you ask quietly, what's something you secretly want in life, but rarely admit out loud? Now something interesting happens inside her mind. You've just stepped into a space most people never enter. Her hidden desires. Her dreams, her frustrations. And when a woman starts sharing those things with you, something subtle begins shifting in her emotional state. She no longer feels like she's just talking to another guy. She feels like she's revealing parts of herself she normally protects. And that vulnerability, mixed with curiosity about you, begins creating the kind of tension that attraction feeds on. But the real psychological trigger hasn't happened yet. Because the third question, the one almost no man dares to ask, is the moment when her emotional guard truly starts to fall. And when you understand why this question works, you'll start seeing women react to you in a completely different way. You'll notice it when her body language softens, when her answers get longer, when she starts looking at you a little differently, as if she's trying to understand why talking to you feels different from talking to everyone else. Most men ruin this moment by rushing. They push too hard. They try to impress her. They try to steer the conversation toward physical attraction too quickly. But real psychological pull doesn't come from pressure. It comes from curiosity. After she shares something about her hidden dreams or desires, you don't immediately jump in with advice or your own story. Instead, you pause for a second. Let the silence breathe. Let her feel that what she just revealed actually mattered. Then you ask the next question, and this one shifts the emotional dynamic even more. You look at her calmly and say, let me ask you something. What kind of energy in a man instantly makes you feel comfortable around him? Notice the wording. You didn't ask what she likes physically. You didn't ask what type of guy she dates. You asked about energy. This question does something fascinating inside her mind. It forces her to describe the emotional experience she wants with a man. Maybe she'll say confidence. Maybe she'll say calmness. Maybe she'll say someone who listens. But here's the hidden psychological trigger. As she describes those qualities, her brain automatically begins comparing them to you in real time. And if you're already embodying those traits in the way you speak, the way you hold eye contact, the way you listen without interrupting, something clicks inside her. Suddenly, the conversation isn't just theoretical anymore. Now it feels personal. Now she's imagining what it might feel like to be closer to you. But the most powerful moment still hasn't happened yet. Because the next step isn't about her describing men. It's about her revealing something about herself that very few people ever get to see. At this point in the conversation, she already feels more emotionally open than she expected to be. You've asked questions that made her think. You've listened in a way that feels rare. Now you lean slightly forward and say something softer. Can I ask you something a little more personal? Almost every time, curiosity wins. She'll say yes. And that's when you ask the question that changes the entire emotional tone of the interaction. What's something about you that only people very close to you ever discover? Watch her carefully when you ask this. Because this question moves the conversation from surface personality into hidden identity. She might talk about her sensitive side. She might reveal that she's actually more emotional than people assume. She might admit that she craves deep connection but rarely finds it. And when a woman shares something like that with you, something important happens psychologically. She begins associating you with safety, with depth, with the rare feeling of being understood. And when those emotions start mixing with curiosity and subtle tension, attraction naturally grows stronger. Not because you forced it, not because you used some cheap trick, but because you created a space where she felt comfortable showing the real version of herself. And the truth is, when a woman feels that level of emotional connection with a man, her guard lowers in ways most men never experience. But there is one final question. A question that creates a spark of playful mystery and makes her start wondering about you just as much as you've been exploring her. And this is the moment where the conversation stops feeling like an interview and starts feeling like something much more electric. The kind of tension that happens when two people start feeling mentally, emotionally, curious about each other. She's already shared things she didn't expect to share tonight. Small secrets, personal thoughts, pieces of herself that most conversations never reach. And here's the strange part about human psychology. When someone opens up like that, their brain starts associating the feeling of vulnerability with the person they're talking to. In this case, you. That's why she's now leaning slightly closer. That's why her eyes stay on you a little longer. Because something inside her is asking a question she hasn't spoken yet. Why does talking to him feel different? Most men miss this moment completely. They panic. They try to impress her. They talk too much. They try to prove their value. But the real power here is calm confidence. You don't rush. You let the conversation breathe. Then, with a slight smile, you ask the next question. But this one is different. Because now you shift the focus. You stop exploring her mind for a moment and invite her to explore yours. You look at her with a calm, slightly playful curiosity and say, "Let me ask you something. What was your first impression of me when we started talking tonight?" This question is powerful for one simple reason. It pulls her into analyzing you. Now her brain starts replaying the interaction from the beginning. Maybe she noticed your confidence. Maybe she thought you were mysterious. Maybe she found you unexpectedly easy to talk to. Whatever she says, something subtle is happening inside her mind. She's mentally justifying why she's enjoying your presence. And the more someone explains their positive feelings about you out loud, the stronger those feelings become. Psychologists call this self-persuasion. But the moment becomes even more powerful when you respond the right way. Instead of reacting with ego, you smile slightly and say something calm. Interesting, because my first impression of you was that you're someone who hides a lot more depth than people probably realize. This does something unexpected. It makes her feel seen again. But it also introduces a sense of intrigue, like you're still discovering pieces of her personality. And curiosity is one of the strongest emotional drivers of attraction. But the final step in this entire dynamic is not another deep question. It's something simpler. Something most men completely forget. After she shares, after the conversation flows, you hold eye contact for a second longer than usual and say something honest. You're actually really interesting to talk to. Not exaggerated. Not desperate. Just calm recognition. And here's the psychological twist most men never understand. Women don't become emotionally drawn to men who chase them. They become drawn to men who make them feel seen, understood, and slightly intrigued at the same time. When your questions guide her into revealing her thoughts, her dreams, and her hidden layers, you're not just having a conversation. You're creating an emotional experience. And emotional experiences are what people remember. Long after the night ends. Long after the conversation is over. She'll remember the man who asked questions no one else asked and listened in a way that made her feel something real. But there is one final psychological trigger that can make her think about you long after you walk away. A small shift in the conversation that turns curiosity into lasting attraction. And almost no man uses it. Most men think attraction grows when you keep pushing the conversation deeper, longer, more intense. They believe they need to constantly prove themselves, constantly entertain, constantly chase the next emotional reaction. But the truth about human psychology is almost the opposite. Desire often grows strongest in the space you leave behind. Think about it. The most memorable conversations you've ever had weren't the ones that felt endless or exhausting. They were the ones that ended at the exact moment the energy was still high, the curiosity still alive, the connection still unfinished. That unfinished feeling is what her mind keeps replaying later. So after the questions, after the laughter, after those small moments where she revealed pieces of herself, you do something that most men never dare to do. You slow the moment down. You look at her for a second, almost like you're studying a puzzle that you're still figuring out. Then you say something calm. Talking to you is actually different than I expected. Not dramatic. Not over the top. Just honest curiosity. And when you say that, something interesting happens inside her mind. Because now she wonders what you mean. She wonders what you noticed about her. She wonders what part of the conversation made you think that. Curiosity flips direction. Now she's the one wanting to understand you. This is where the real psychological balance appears. Up until now, you've been exploring her thoughts, her emotions, her hidden layers. But now her mind naturally begins doing the same thing to you. And attraction often grows strongest when two people start wondering about each other at the same time. But there is one final detail that makes the entire interaction unforgettable. Confidence without pressure. Instead of turning the conversation into a chase, instead of asking for validation, instead of pushing things into awkward territory, you simply allow the moment to breathe. You smile slightly and say something playful but calm. You're a little more mysterious than you pretend to be. Notice what this does. You're not praising her appearance. You're not using predictable compliments. You're acknowledging something about her personality, something deeper. And that type of recognition hits a completely different emotional layer in a woman's mind. Because most people notice the surface. Very few notice the depth. When she feels like you noticed something hidden about her, it creates intrigue. And intrigue is the emotional spark that keeps attraction alive. Now here's the part that most men underestimate. The ending. Instead of dragging the moment out, instead of trying to squeeze more reactions from her, you leave the conversation with calm confidence. Something simple like, I enjoyed this conversation. We should continue at another time. Then you step away from the moment before it loses its energy. No desperation. No pressure. Just quiet certainty. And later, when she's alone, her mind begins replaying everything. The unusual questions. The way you listened. The moments where she revealed things she didn't expect to share. And the strange feeling that you somehow saw more in her than most people ever do. That's the real secret behind psychological attraction. It's not about manipulating someone's emotions. It's about creating conversations that feel rare, genuine, and emotionally stimulating. Because when someone experiences a moment that feels different from every other interaction they've had, they remember the person who created it. And if you understand how to guide conversations this way, you won't need rehearsed lines or fake confidence ever again. You'll simply know how to make people feel something real. If this video opened your eyes to the deeper psychology behind attraction and human connection, make sure you subscribe to Female Code Unlocked for more insights that most people never talk about. Because the more you understand human behavior, the less you have to chase attention, and the more naturally it comes to you.